channel where all of our live webinars live. So if we can go to the next slide, I will give you a little briefing on the upcoming events that we have for our webinar, for our future webinars. So our next one is in October, and it will be featuring Sharon Reed, who I know quite well. She has worked a lot with girls empowerment, and it's going to be a really interesting session. In November, we'll have Peggy Johnson, our EVP at Microsoft here, and in December, Claire Norris will talk about her transition and experience as an entrepreneur. And if you missed our event last month, please tune into our YouTube channel, where you can listen to Mia Beck talk about some of the things that she's learned and as she tries to balance work life and family life. So today's presenter is Laura Butler, and you guys are in for a really interesting ride. She is currently a Vice President of Engineering for OneNote and a lifelong fan and power user of our productivity tools. She just couldn't help but being attracted to the gravitational pull of the group within Microsoft that owns Notes, Inc., Whiteboarding, to-dos, and education tools. And these tools are really central to Microsoft's vision of and mission of empowering every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. Laura is a cookie baking machine, which all of her friends and colleagues will tell you, and also known as the cat's pajamas, which is a 1920s term for someone who is fun, well-loved, and excellent at what they do. She's also the first woman technical fellow at Microsoft. She started at Microsoft in 1989 as an intern, lured by the promise of free dinners, and followed in the footsteps of other tech mavens by dropping out of Harvard. After shipping many versions of Windows and NetMeeting, she left Microsoft in 2000 to search for adventure. She did startups, cooking classes, circus, aerobatics, house remodeling, mountain climbing, reading the complete trilogy of The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, ran marathons, and improv comedy. Those are just a few of the things that she tried. And as you can imagine, all of those and more came in handy when she returned to Microsoft in the summer of 2009, and she's been here ever since. She readily admits that she's a bit quirky, a pop kitsch queen who freely mixes references to 80s anthems, cult classics, Miss Piggy with nods to high culture things like War and Peace and Horatio Hornblower. An avid journaler, can everyone please mute, please? Thank you. An avid journaler, she's been known to host pajama-themed meetings as a stress reducer. Can you imagine being on her team? I want to be there. Her cats are named Pavlov and Curie, after the scientist. She's a Star Trek fanatic with an autographed picture of William Shatner and a Spock cookie jar by her desk. I first saw Laura speak last year and was immediately captivated, as I know you will be. She'll be presenting her presenting by live video today. So let us know in the chat window if you can't see her live. And please make sure that your mics are muted. We will address all the questions from the Q&A in the chat window. So Laura, turn on your video and let's say hello.
Hi, everybody. So I was thinking that I always start with the title for a talk, and then that kind of gives me the theme. And as Sally was speaking, my thought was Karma Chameleon. It should be like the next title of my talk. Well, first of all, I want to say, wow, I guess that Apple event must have been really boring because we got 47 people online already here. They didn't really announce anything at all, right? No new iPhones or what have you. And the second thing I thought I'd say before I dig in is, well, we chose this title, Sally and I, about Make Trouble and Fall Up. And really, it gets at something very deep that I believe when it comes to technology. It's disruptive, right? By definition, innovation is a deviation from the status quo. All change, disruption, difference looks like trouble. And since it's new, no one knows how to do it, so you're going to fall, right? So being prepared for that and embracing it is actually how to be a fabulous innovator. So I guess I'll tell you a little bit about who I am. And I know the light's a little strange. I wasn't counting on sunlight in Seattle in September. So we did a little, MacGyver-like, put the laptop on some books, try to cover the window. So apologies. Also, maybe it gives a little art house look, little chiaroscuro kind of thing going on. So I guess I could tell you a little bit about who I am. Well, I am a completely accidental techie. Seriously, like I was a nomadic kid. I was the best test taker, rule follower, but it was so that I could escape notice. And books were my comfort. I didn't really make friends because we moved around a lot. But I was sure that the answer to anything was in a book, and if I just kept my head down and I got an A+ on classes, that it would all take care of itself. But I was going to be like an astronaut, spy, writer, international ambassador, ninja, just biding time until I could command the expedition to Mars. And I ended up in computer science because I failed like the most basic requirement freshman year of college, which was to access email. I mean, there's nothing more embarrassing than having to do like a pimp perp walk in front of 1,600, smart people, like holding your head down in shame. And I really had three choices, and I was so broke. I mean, I was already knew I was going to have to give blood and take psych tests, and I did both those things to pay for my science books because science books are expensive. I mean, 1987, Introduction to Computer Science was like $150, which in 1987 dollars. And it's a good thing I have B negative blood type because I would have starved to death if I'd had something more common. Anyhow, so I couldn't afford to take a sixth class. I was working. I couldn't take a seminar at night. The only thing that fit my schedule was like the real person's programming class. And everyone tried to encourage me not to do that. And being a contrarian, Miss Piggy, Bugs Bunny type, I was like, sign me up. I also didn't have a choice. And it was hard. But the harder it got, the better I was at it. And the thing I did not know at the time was I have life hacker-like skills from all of this moving around and just assuming no one was ever going to invite me in somewhere. And if they did, it's not like the front door was going to be unlocked. I kind of had more practical knowledge and skills about how to get shit done. Yeah, and I swore, but so we can bleep that out in the YouTube. And that came in super handy. There were people that were really IQ smart who could not figure out how to get a bank account. So I always just kind of could figure weird things out. And that is how I ended up at Microsoft. And that was perfect timing because this was a time when, there was no software industry as we know of it today. Nobody knew where it was going to go. And the companies that existed were recruiting for strange, creative, problem-solving, diverse skills. It's like I found my tribe when I got here. It was the island of misfit toys, and it was a fabulous time. All things were possible. And it worked, by the way. It built this industry. So I kind of hope that we're coming back around to that. I think it kind of got middle-aged. We talk about bros and Silicon Valley, and there are these cookie cutter types and resumes, and you must have this certain profile of classes and GPAs and internships. And yet none of that was there when this industry took off. So I think there's something to that. I was the first technical fellow at Microsoft. That was 2015. Technical fellow is the same as vice president. It's literally just a text difference in the address book. It is supposed to be for people that are only doing engineering. There's some technical fellows who really run businesses, and there are some only engineering people that are vice presidents. It's gotten a little fuzzy. I decided I didn't like that title. And, well, I want to back up. I heard this amazing woman speak, and I got to hang out with Peggy Johnson, in fact, so you should totally attend the October and November sessions of this webinar. But and it was at this thing that was called the Makers Conference, and I was Peggy's guest, and this woman came on stage. Her name was Carla Harris. This was early 2015. She was the first African-American woman, I think, who graduated with a finance degree from Harvard. Certainly one of the first VPs or executives in finance ever. She told her story, And she did everything right. And now, keep in mind, this woman went through segregation in the South. Okay. And so she ends up at this investment bank, and she's following all the rules and being a good person, and she's not getting promoted. And she finally asked her manager, why am I not getting promoted? And he said to her, I kid you not, Carla, we don't think you're tough enough. And inside, this is at least my version of the story, was like, are you freaking kidding me? I grew up in the segregated South. I put myself through school. I'm not tough enough. And she had been hiding who she was. She did not want to play into perceived stereotypes. She's a Southern Baptist lady, likes church, likes to sing gospel. And she just decided, how could people, like, nobody knows who I am. If I don't tell people who I am, they're going to assume things about me. And this is when I think about branding. This is what it really means to me. So she said, I'm tough. Started going to the gym. She started thinking I'm tough. Started walking down the halls. I'm tough. And a couple months later, she was walking down to some meeting, and she caught up with some group and said, hey, what are you going to talk about? And they ran off. She's like, what's going on? Someone said, oh, Carla, everyone's scared of you because you're so tough. So she got promoted, by the way, and now she has books, highly recommended, Expect to Win, and others in the series. Her bits of wisdom she calls Carla's Pearls. So I heard this woman talk in early 2015, and it kind of blew my mind. I didn't really know how it blew my mind, but it was like kind of computing in the background. So fast forward to getting promoted to technical fellow, end of 2015. And I don't know, it didn't sit right with me. And I had to think about why. And after I thought about it, first of all, as I just told you, technical fellow is not a hard or rigid title. It's unclear how you get it. We don't have the equivalents for sales or program management or data science, although Jennifer Chase was just promoted to TF, she's in research. So it's not very inclusive. So that bothers me just on principle. Second thing, technical. Oh, is that a hideous, horrible word? It's a word used really to put other people down a lot of the time. Oh, well, her clothes match. She must not be technical. Or, oh, that guy has Renaissance knowledge and is a great writer. He must not be technical. And particularly in debates, it's used almost like a religious thing, like, oh, well, it's too hard. You're not technical enough, for me to explain it to you, which really means the person talking doesn't know what the hell they're talking about, right? That's one of those red flags to me. So that really was bothering me. And then also, I'm not a dude. I'm not a fellow. I'm not going to ever look like a fellow. I don't aspire to look like a fellow. I'm 5 feet tall. I have no problem wearing pink. That's me. So deal with it, world. So I love Star Trek, and I had this aha moment. I'm like, Star Treknical fellow, but I'm not a dude. Star Treknical goddess. I like goddess. It's one of the few female versions in English of powerful words that everybody loves. I thought about it. I'm like, if you dominate a meeting when you're a man, right? What's the female equivalent? Dominatrix. Oh dear. Or you're master of the universe. Well, what's the female equivalent? Mistress of the universe does not really mean the same thing at all, right? Goddess is better than God. Hard stop. I thought it might also come with a wardrobe, funding. Well, it didn't, but still, goddesses, they're benevolent, they dress well, they're beloved, they're rational, and they're powerful. So that was that. I think Sally talked about how, cat pajamas. I really have learned over time that when you're a leader, you're trying to bring people to the middle. In the moments of the most stress is when thought goes out the door. So humor and calming things down is very, very wise. And then when everything's on the floor and everybody's depressed because the bugs are spilling in, humor, pulling it up back to the middle, humor works. Cat pajamas, because we were working around the clock and we're having a pajama party. So might as well wear pajamas and pop some popcorn. So a couple other things about me, and then I'll tell you a little bit about my philosophy, a little about my career path. And then questions. And by the way, I can rattle on for forever, so feel free to jump in. There's a book called Microserfs by Douglas Copeland There's a character in it called Carla that is actually based on me for real. Someone who gave Douglas Copeland notes was next door office mate. He changed a couple things. I mean, Carla, Laura, yeah, nothing in common there, right? Short, snarky, spicy, sassy girl. Yeah, you wouldn't get that either. I think the character, I don't remember, but I think she ate flat food. In my case, it was totally liquids. Liquids because I was going through dental work, but also because I needed both my hands for like typing and debugging. And I had my door closed because people would bug me all the time. I had one of the fanciest computers ever created at the time, and everyone wanted to touch it, so I couldn't get any work done. So I was like, you got to like knock on the door and stick a little flat note underneath. Anyhow, so that's one thing. Little side factoid to be in the know on. Am the developer, inventor, manager, creator of a bunch of things that you've heard of, and unfortunately, in some cases, still use. And I'm sorry for that. I was an intern when we did the file open, file save, font picker dialogues, and the printer dialogue. The choose font dialogue, I'm really particularly sorry about because this was like 1990. And, it was WYSIWYG, right? So it's like, hey, let's just go enumerate all the fonts on this system and render them. And there was really only one font. It was called System. And then there was like a bold version. And then there was an italic version, right? And then there was a strike-through version, maybe. And that was it. So it was really fast. And now it's like really slow. If you reboot your computer or you upgrade Office and you bring the font dialogue up for the first time, it's like chugga, 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 chugga. So that was never intended to last this long. Other things, a lot of things around app sharing, desktop sharing, remote desktop, video conferencing. Wrote lots and lots of code for Windows 95, getting Win32 and Win16 to coexist. I fixed the last bug in Windows 95. And so that was really kind of great. So in terms of career path, like I said, I ended up at Microsoft by mistake. And truthfully, everything that has led to the next advance in my career has been either a disaster, a mistake, or what looked like a backstep. And I have enough data points for me to believe there's something profound here, and that gets back to that innovation philosophy. Like coming to Microsoft, nobody knew who Microsoft was. It was like, Microsoft? Why wouldn't you go to Goldman Sachs? This was an investment banking era back in the 1980s with the poofy sleeves and the polka dots and the Reeboks. Leaving Microsoft, going to Windows. I ended up at Windows because it was going to die. I was an intern on Word for Windows 1.0, and they weren't going to let the interns touch any of the real bugs in it because they were all really hard. It was in printing and text formatting. They didn't know what to do with the interns. And the Windows guys were begging for help. So I was the red shirt intern. And really the requirement at the time was to have a pulse. And if you didn't have a pulse, as long as you were willing to work at night and didn't eat, and could tolerate garlic, like that was okay too. So it was like, oh my God, we got somebody in the Windows team. And Windows 95 just ended up going the way that everybody else thought it was going to go, which was to take bullets until OS2 took over. So that was one of those. I got more scope and more room by kind of being a contrarian. NetMeeting was the same way. It was the internet happened, and Blake Irving, who is now the CEO of GoDaddy, needed to start an internet apps group. And we're like, okay, well, like let's take the easiest thing you could possibly do: video conferencing with sharing apps over low bandwidth. And it was like, that's crazy. That'll never work. Well, that turned into to really be the great grandmother of a lot of technology we use today, including the stuff we're using for this webinar. Leaving Microsoft was a bad thing at the time, but I think I had to grow up. All of the things I did, adventure travel, circus acrobatics, learning how to cook, reading a lot, were the most useful things I've ever done for my engineering career, because they involve the human. Looking back on my first half at Microsoft, I would say I was like a competitor. I was Usain Bolt. And I was also kind of self-centered. I was narcissistic and also insecure. Like it was all about me. If someone got promoted, I was getting promoted faster. And if they did that, I was going to fix 2 more bugs. I don't think I was a very fun person to be around. And I don't think I was a great manager or a leader. I think I added a lot of stress to the teams I worked in and worked with. I was rock solid, dependable, but I don't think I was someone you wanted to be with a lot. And I didn't have a philosophy about why am I really here. Life was this thing that was going to happen later somehow. So really my brain IQ was high and my grown-up and emotional IQ was really low. So I needed that part to catch up. And so leaving Microsoft was crazy helpful for that, though it didn't necessarily feel like it at the time. Really, like, what is it all about? Why are we really here? What are we trying to do? What is adventure travel really so great at? About the surprise and being agile and seeing things, doing things that no one's done before. And what are adventure trips that work out even under very tough circumstances, right? What keeps people talking to each other and actually getting closer in hardships situations. So that's kind of profound, right? Especially in an industry that's transforming and especially in a company that transforms itself. It's transformed itself at least 3 times since I've been here, and you could say it's going through 4th one. So when I came back, I was just in a different mindset. It was, I'm not signing on for something specific or rigid. I'm not signing on to some beautiful PowerPoint presentation. I've been burned by that before, where the demo looks great and it's gorgeous, and then you realize everyone's spending their time on the demo fakery and not on the real thing. I joined Windows Phone because they were like, we have no idea how we're going to do this, but it's Joe Belfiore, who was my PM in Windows 95. The talent was great, and they're like, it's existential for Microsoft. So I was prepared for an adventure, and it was a good thing, because what I got hired to do was canceled before I even started. So old Laura would have like freaked out, and new Laura was like, no problem, I'm here for, we're here to get to Everest. I wasn't tied to the particular path. So I've been very fortunate in my career, I would say. I have found people to partner with, although I think it's part of my job to figure out how to partner with anybody. I have had opportunities. Of course, I've also, at the time, they didn't look like opportunities to almost everybody else. I know I'm not going to outrun anyone. I'm short. I'm not going to stand out physically, right? The only way I'm going to find opportunity is by looking the opposite direction of everybody else, which also fits my contrarian nature. So I think really embracing who I am and looking for those things, and then having a theory about why they have worked for me, has been really the secret to all. And so now I'm at a place where if everybody starts telling me I'm crazy, what? You're going to step back from running a 200-person team and go take on a 25-person team? Are you crazy? Are you throwing your career away? I'm like instantly like, there's probably something to this. And I've also found when you make a change, you can go faster if you don't have a lot of weight, metaphorically and literally, on your shoulders. You know, it's very hard, especially this more senior you get in your career, to move divisions, move companies, new culture, new technology, new people, and and manage it all, like from day one, right? It's a lot easier to go lighter when you change up. You can run faster, you know, back uphill, run down, run up to the side, and you get to earn trust. So I kind of take that approach. In terms of philosophy, and then I think I'll turn it over to questions. Really, I want to take a step back, and I want to talk about engineering, because we talk about women in engineering and women in tech a lot. The press loves to write about this all of the time, and they're not in engineering, and it's quite frustrating to me. It's not that they're not technical, but they're not in it in the day-to-day. Engineering is just about making stuff. It's about making stuff to solve problems, and you're solving problems to make that stuff. Okay, and you're applying science and logic, hopefully good science and good logic, and algorithms, which are just procedures and steps, right? To it, you're using data to reason. People are making these things, and we're making these things for people. I went into engineering to get away from people problems. People are messy. And the truth is, the real art of engineering is got people in the middle. And all parts of this system are engineering. So this gets back to my hatred of that word technical. I engineer presentations. I engineer recipes. I engineer a house remodel. I engineer management systems. I engineer culture. I engineer code. They're all the same to me. Making UX design is engineering. If you are writing a document, a spec, or a help manual, that is engineering. All engineering involves humans, communication, and the best engineering tackles human problems and takes human factors into account, right? Make the tech be there to in support of and to augment the human instead of making the human adapt overmuch to the tech. So then I think about, well, what are the best human problems? And to me, the things that amplify, add, make better use of, or give more access to the things that are the most precious on this planet. Time, quality of life, freedom, and joy. Those are not in the hands of 7.5 billion people on this planet. Hard stop. And this is like a very personal thing to me, because by no laws, rules, procedures, or standards in the industry as you hear of it today would I ever have been hired as a software engineer at a major software engineering company. And I had a very poor childhood in some cases. I mean, there were so many points in my life growing up where my life could have gone a different way. And yet I had access to opportunity. I got lucky, and I'm here, and I am not bad at this stuff. Okay, I'm not at all. So you think about all of those other people on the planet with ideas who, if they have access to the tools and the knowledge, right, and the opportunities, what we could actually accomplish in this world. Orders of magnitude more capacity. And that's what Microsoft was actually founded on. With the PC on every desktop, it wasn't about selling people hardware and software. It was about a scale increase in access to achievement, right? And the ability to achieve and accomplish things. And I just want to take this to the limit. So I think about every day, like the things that I do and the problem spaces I'm attracted to. Are they increasing my time, my freedom, my happiness, my quality of life in the workplace? And it's my job to add to those things. It's my job to morph my job to enhance those things for me and my team without taking them away from other people. But even more importantly, are they doing that for the customers and the developers and the partners? And it's okay if, I make fun of this myself, but if a yo app is what makes you laugh, an app that presses a button and says yo and shares yo with your friends, that's great. You're adding to joy if it's meaningful to you. But I do worry that this industry has gotten kind of incestuous, and we all talk to each other, and we're very focused on our own first world problems, and they're not really improving or adding to those scarce resources. And that's where all the growth is going to come from, right? If you think about emerging markets. So that's kind of my philosophy. And I really use that on how I pick what I do, what teams I want to go to, how I think we're doing. Do I feel joy about it? It's what gets me up in the morning. And then if I have that, the rest just falls away. Those are just annoyances or hurdles or obstacles that just need to be knocked down and gotten through to get to the prize, which is more time, more happiness, more freedom, more quality of life for vastly more people on the planet. And time is money. So there's also economic benefit to all of this. It's not just a political one or a social one. So that's that. I think I blabbed at you like for plenty long. Time for questions maybe?
Thanks, Laura. Hey, I had a question for you. While people put some questions in the chat window, it seems like the path that you've taken has required some major changes throughout your life, and required you to call upon a tremendous amount of courage. Can you address that? Because change is hard and scary.
It is. You know what? I am a complete scaredy cat. I am scared of everything. I am small. I'm a woman. I'm a nerd. I'm a weirdo. I was the kid just trying to hide, not get beat up in class. I did the homework of my high school football team, so they'd cover for me in gym. And my high school football team went on to the best schools they've ever gone to, and of which some flunked out. I'm scared of everything. But then, I learned a couple things from my mom, and then I've learned a technique. So my mom was very clear that there's dignity in trying. Okay. There's no dignity in just giving up or choking or not trying. I call that kind of like bad frat boy behavior. You all went to school with somebody who's like, oh yeah, I don't study for this class. And then they're like, man, I'm so genius. I got a B- by cramming at the end. And they act like that's a great thing. That drives me crazy. I think that's the not having to put your whole heart into something and not get it broken or not know that you're not the best in the world at something. But that can't ever lead to awesomeness. So there's an attitude part of it. And then there's basically, if you try, you will, first of all, it calms you down. Like I find I'm at my most anxious and nervous when I sit in my head. If I write things down and I do something, I have control. First, writing it down makes it more concrete. And then I usually look at it and realize it's not as bad as it sounds. And then I can sit there and go, okay, in the case of disaster, like if you've ever seen this worst case survival handbook, I could write a book like 1,000 times the size of that. Like I know what I'm going to do. I've got a little maybe OCD. If I get charged by a rhinoceros or if I get charged by a hippopotamus, depending on whether there's a tree, there's water, there's a car, or there's nothing, I know what I would do. Okay. And somehow knowing that makes me feel better when I'm in the moment, right? But trying and getting concrete and then being in control, like it's not, change is not happening to me. Change is occurring. It's just the state of the universe, but I am driving it. Is really how I deal. And then I think it also helps to put world events into perspective. We're in the middle of back to school this fall, and there's a whole lot of new software with teams and classrooms and new features, and it's a very stressful time for everybody. The teachers are stressed, regardless of technology. Teachers are stressed, right? You've got kids in a classroom. We don't pay in the United States teachers, frankly, nearly as much money as they are worth. That's my 2 cents, actually my fraction of a Bitcoin. And it's just stressful. And, and of course, we're here trying to make sure to support all of these folks. I don't want to be the one that caused some, I don't want to be like, OneNote ate my homework, like the old days of dog ate my homework or email ate my homework. And so it's stressful and it does matter and it affects people's lives. However, I am in a building that has air conditioning, has free soda, has people who clean it every day for me. Okay. I have law department who, if like I'm affected by immigration, will help get me out of it. It is not the same as what's happening in Syria. It is not Boko Haram. It is not Irma. It is not the hurricanes. It's not the earthquake in Mexico. It is not the typhoon in China, right? So I try to put this stuff in perspective. And I know, there's nothing beneath me. I will feed myself, short of extremes. And I'm not talking about where the laws of economics and physics bend at the extremes. But if I had to work at McDonald's to pay my mortgage, I would. I sold my first set of options from Microsoft to pay my mom back for college because I didn't know she took out a second mortgage on her one asset and could have ended up literally in danger of losing it.
Wow.
I would do that again in a second. I know what those options would be, where I would be retired on a private island right now. And you know what? I don't care, because that's not what that money's for. Freedom. It's not for money, right? Being able to sleep well at night and be good to people is what this is all about. So I think about that too, and about the people who depend on me, right? Where I've given my word. So that's what some days it's just like, okay, just take a step. I'm scared. It is certainly a different mindset when you are the captain of a big boat and not just sort of navigating your own little tiny speedboat yourself, right?
Well, that brings up a question that we got in the chat window. It's a perfect segue. The question that we got from one of our participants is, do you advise planning a long-term career strategy or focusing more on opportunities available at each career step and reacting to them?
Yes and no, and option C. I am always planning long term. It makes me feel like I have a structure, but I'm also aware that 90% of that's going to get thrown out, right? If you stick to the train tracks, then you lose opportunities because you're like, oh, well, I've planned that at age 26.5, I'm going to do X, and if someone offers you Y, you don't even think about it, right? Having a plan and like at least thinking I have a plan lets me relax, makes it feel like I'm anchored, but I'm well aware that in the moment is when all the, amazing things can happen. And so I plan to be spontaneous is maybe a way to think about it. More than that, I think understanding what makes me happy and when I'm not, and being in tune with my emotions about like, why am I not happy, or like, what's wrong, what's the disturbance in the force, is really the useful thing. Otherwise, you just end up being random. Like you have a bad day and you're like, rage quit. Like that's not career management. I would say I have gravitated towards what I would call hub jobs, and especially if I'm new, there are places where lots of info and lots of different things connect, and they can be overwhelming. We call it drinking from the fire hose. Like running Windows fundamentals, which is what I did before coming to OneNote. I mean, that's the insider program. It's performance, power, reliability, deployment, feedback. You have to get systems to manage all that stuff. But you really get a view of the forest through the trees, and you make a lot of connections that lead to your next opportunity. So I think when I'm going to end with, I'd say my career path, I would call it a ziggurat. I go deep on a thing so that I feel like I'm not totally clueless. Maybe I'm mastering Star Trek trivia, and then I broaden, and then I go deep, and I broaden, and I go deep. So I would look for hubs, and then I would think about trying a bunch of different things. Everybody should try management. There's a lot of myths about it. That's like especially illusion of control when it's really a service job, if anything. But know what's your mission. And it's okay to not have a mission at points in your life. There are times when you need to be a mercenary. You have a sick parent. You have kids in school, right? And the last thing I'll say, and then we'll get to the next question, is success. The single biggest thing I've done for my career is get out of evaluating success and failure as zeros and ones in a short time span. And it's such a tendency, especially if you're in engineering, right? It's got to be a 0 or a 1 because we don't have quantum computing in our heads yet. And it's computed in a clock tick. Success and failure are very, 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 very long-term things. I think it's interesting that our ancient foremothers and fathers understood this. Like Themistocles in ancient Greek really said you didn't even know someone's life until you couldn't evaluate it until they were gone. You had to roll it out like a carpet to be able to look at the warp and the weft. So I think about that. And then, I do gradient ascent. I would say I try to make faster moves that are better, but I also don't mind going down. Like I time bound it. And that's really how I've gone about it. I'm kind of past a career in a way, so I know it's not necessarily great advice for younger people.
So I have another question for you. This is from Jillian. What will be the biggest challenge for women behind you?
Well, I hope I don't want women behind me. I want women with me. I think we got to get out of this everything's a woman thing. This has really been one of the hardest parts for me too. There are people who I don't get along with because I'm loud. There are people I don't get along with because we just have some really fundamental engineering philosophy disagreements. There are people I don't get along with because it's chemistry, or we don't connect. The easiest thing to go to for both of us is that it's because I'm a woman in tech, and that's sort of superficial. I really trying to figure out how to win, and I don't mean compromising your principles, but like not putting people into corners where they can't get out of. Like I think about that Google bro dude, which by the way, like obviously, like, nothing about how that played out was awesome. But it got to a point where there was no place to go except for him to be evil. And I think the art of success is all in the middle. Like maybe 10% of people that say shit really, really believe it and mean it. 50% are just following along with the, trying it on for size. I care about that 50%. So I really think about trying to get back to being human beings. And unfortunately, you know what? We're at a place where we've got to be the bigger man sometimes. I mean, just like I think sometimes I feel like I'm an alien ambassador to a slightly less civilized planet. What's going to win it is the entire planet uplifting. So to get back to kind of answer that question, I think for women to get out of being, like, for this to become a non-issue, there was a period where I was super enjoying all the diversity stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, there's other women in the bathroom, I can talk. And then I went through a phase where I'm like, oh my God, there's a line for the women's bathroom, this really sucks. And now we're back in a phase where I get to be extra special. I don't want to get addicted to that, because real success is we don't talk about this stuff anymore, right? Think about it. Right? When, like, why would you ever talk? But you can get addicted to, I think, crises and to getting prominence and special funding and special events. So that's managing this transition, and also getting allies, like not having it be a 0 or 1. Like find the thing that's common with other people. People who are, I mean, we talk, like one example, we talk about getting interrupted in meetings a lot. Well, it turns out you can't be interrupted if you don't stop talking. There are lots of quiet men too. Like that's something where, like, us kind of, and I'm just grossly generalizing, I know, like finding that commonality, right? That there's characteristics that cause people to get interrupted, and there's characteristics that cause people to not fight the interruption, and they're not just gender, or making it beyond gender would be really helpful to kind of getting these things solved and improved faster. It's not to deny all of the research and the data about the very real things that happen in the day-to-day. But like, have this be guys' problems too. And how to talk about it in ways that are safe, where it's not people in the conversation are bad.
Thank you, Laura. I have a question for you. So you kind of entitled this presentation "Make Trouble and Fall Up." So as you've made trouble along the way, can you give us a couple of examples of what that looked like and how you might have overcome the naysayers or objectors?
Oh wow! Well, there's a 1,000-page book I could write on Windows Phone.
Just pick one.
Pick one. Well, make trouble and fall up. Well, you know what? Since we're talking about women's issues, I'm going to tell a story, and it's got a happy ending. And this is about partly like how to make, not just make lemonade, but make a profit from selling the lemonade, and then start actively looking for lemons so that you can make lemonade and make money from it. So I worked for the head of engineering for Windows Phone back in Windows Phone 7, 8 days. So I owned the shell down to the graphics stack. And I get in early, because that's the only way I get my head around what the heck's going to happen that day. I hate getting up early, but I hate even more not knowing what I'm going to do. And if you're an engineering manager, you got lots of stuff in your office. And being an even better engineering manager than your average bear, I also have birthday cards, stationery, snacks. In fact, it looks a lot like the office of an admin. And I sat next to my boss. And so packages would get delivered really early in the morning, and they'd always ask me to sign for them. And I was fuming about it, to be honest, fuming at multiple levels, because if you have the pleasure and the privilege of having admin support, these people work their butts off for us. It's really unbelievable. It's not. So the fact that I was annoyed that I was getting mistaken as my boss's admin was annoying to me personally, as like I'm not the best person that I'd like to think that I am. And then there was a little bit of a rant like, I am an engineer, distinguished engineer, blah, 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 right? Like, why are you always asking me? There's 8 other guys in the office. Why are you always asking me, people? And also in my head was there's nothing less becoming than someone with authority screaming at somebody who can't do anything about it. I mean, totally not cool, right? You want to take the measure of someone who has power. The measure is them choosing not to use it when they don't think anybody's looking, right? Okay. So I think I got one of these, and I was just having a bad day, and I was like really, really about to just throw a little temper tantrum. And the delivery guy said, the computers are downstairs. And I went, the computers, how many are they? They're like, oh, about 100. Well, we had spent a fortune in Windows Phone to go get the highest and fastest development machines we could dream of. I mean, you cut 3 hours off build time for your average dev, and it makes them incredibly happy and incredibly productive, right? This was the first shipment. So I signed for them, and since I signed for them, they were mine. They went to my team. My team, which was also the crux of this Windows Phone 8 engineering project, all got fast builds. And what happened was a bunch of things. Number one, I got a reputation for being a magician in my own team. Like, somehow Laura managed to, we're living in the land of the mythical 2-hour build. Second was everybody in every other team was like, oh my God, those guys have their acts together. They've got 2-hour builds. Three, well, it caused discontent. That wasn't my intention, which bubbled up to my peers, and I got called on it. So I think about 2 months, maybe 1 month, 2 months in, we were in a staff meeting, and they're like, Laura's got all the machines, and then they told me I wasn't a team player, and this was one of those moments where I could have just been a victim or sulked. And I went, I'm sorry, but I signed for these machines. When you guys sign for something, I will totally back you up. And it being you got outplayed, man up. And so, I mean, we kind of turned it into a joke and a funny thing. And it just really worked, by the way. We managed to ship this release on time. So I made some trouble, right? I wasn't trying to hurt anybody else, but I also wasn't just going to bow my neck down. I'll apologize if I hurt somebody's feelings, but I don't apologize for that. Another one, recruiting. So we had just made HoloLens public inside of Microsoft, and they were hiring like crazy. I owned a group basically whose brand tagline would be, come work 24/7 around the clock to try to save Windows Phone and maintain it while everybody else around you is doing glamorous stuff, including HoloLens. And you probably won't get rewarded or recognized for it. So that's a little hard that's a hard way to recruit, can I say. So I kind of thought about it like a funnel. And I'm like, well, if I can get people to talk to me, I have a chance. If they don't talk to me, clearly I can't interview them. Well, that's how the cookies got started. I'm like, well, we were having free dinners all across Windows at the time. I'll set up a cookie stand in the cafeteria. People have to walk through this door. I'll have cookies, and they can have a cookie if they agreed to talk to me. And it worked. Really, my boss at the time said I could not hire enough people to cause him pain, and I caused him so much pain I almost got fired. And people complained. I had folks saying, well, that's not fair. Laura, big cookies. How am I supposed to recruit it? And I'm like, nothing's keeping you guys from turning your stupid ovens on, right? It's like, so it's again a case where like I kind of thought outside the box, where I didn't take the rules as law. I wasn't trying to break the rules. I wasn't trying to do anything evil. And again, it's where all the opportunity is, right? It's like it's kind of a different approach. And I kind of think about all of us, and we're outside the box. We think outside the box nature. We don't have to try to think outside the box. We are outside the box.
Right. It's not that you're not playing by the rules. You've changed the game completely.
Well, yeah, and Donna Sarkar talks about this. I mean, the rules, she says the rules are someone else's opinion. We should all be clear. A lot of the rules in business, in the Western world, in the workplace, were made by people who are not like me. They weren't made for me. They weren't made to help me. They were made for, by, and to help the people who made them. And it's, like I like to, as a contrarian, I like to break them. Oh, hey, this says don't enter. Well, I guess I want to go in there. But even better is to get the rules changed, or at least people recognizing where the rules break down so that they don't become these codified, like commandments without intent behind them. Right. So I'd say that's the source of most of my trouble. Or, hey, if the thing sitting between us and shipping on time is snacks, I'll go buy snacks. Facilities doesn't like I have food out? Okay, great. Well, I'll do something about it. But I'm not going to stop bringing food if that's the thing that's going to make the difference for our team.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Laura. Really appreciate your time today. This has been fun and insightful and really quite entertaining. You're a great speaker and you really get to the root of the matter. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. We're going to wrap up with just a quick reminder to join us next month for Share and Read. Thanks, Laura. Thanks so much.
Thanks, live long and prosper, everybody.
So we'll have Sharon Reed with us next time, and then we will focus from there on to our November and December events. Remember that all of these are archived on our YouTube channel, and be sure, if you're not already a member of our LinkedIn LinkedIn group, to join that as well.